Okay, we're back. And did you have a point that you wanted to make?
About what?
Well, on the loosely assembled factual basis for some of the opinions that you've rendered so far, do you have anything more that might buttress any of those
These opinions when you go to a yoga class, they want you to do this, and I understand why you say, Om, because that resonates inside your head and makes you feel good.
Ah, good.
And that's why I give these opinions. There's no factual basis for them. They make me feel good. It kind of feels good in my mouth to say these things.
Does it?
Yeah.
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 Could you give us
some of them have some factual basis.
Give me some highlights of the things you're the proudest of in the last 4 years of Obama, because I think you probably have some things that you feel really good about. And
I think Obama, despite him overplaying it, leaking classified information and all the cheesy stuff he did, I give him credit for authorizing the raid on bin Laden.
Yeah,
I give him credit for that.
Apparently, Biden voted against that.
Yeah,
you know that? Yeah, he didn't want to do it. So that's nice.
So that's that took some courage. I thought that was pretty good.
Anything else yet?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I'm trying to think.
What do you? Anything else you think he's doing well?
No, I can't think of anything.
Not a thing.
No,
okay.
Not a thing.
Well, if you think of something.
No. Well, what do you think? What are the crowning achievements? The patient care and
I think
patient protection.
I think it's fabulous. Yeah, I think it really is. I think it's fabulous.
You like? Really?
Well, we have what 30 to 35 million people now that are going to be able to have health care. I think it's a step in the right direction towards universal health care. I mean, single payer
those are pretty good arguments.
Yeah.
We do have, and we notice it in our practice, there are loads of people who, not the kind of people that it's easy to criticize and say, well, they deserve it. A lot of people who do not fall into that category, you can't blame them for being in their situation. Maybe they don't, maybe they didn't graduate from college, but they've done pretty well, and they're faithful husbands and fathers, and they work hard, and they fall into hard times, or somebody runs over their foot or something, and they're just screwed.
And they are screwed, yeah.
They're just totally screwed. Can't get there from here.
A lot of people don't understand right now what the status of who's covered and who isn't covered. Let me just cover that for a second, and we'll talk a little bit more about the health care. But if you're 65 or over, you're covered by Medicare, Part A and Part B. Don't worry about what those are, the ones at hospital and ones at doctors, but you're covered by Medicare. So it will be the aging part of the population.
The old people.
And that's why they're so mobilized and fearful of any erosion of Medicare at all. And why it's such a big problem, because the projected Medicare costs.
Because there's got to be a change in Medicare.
It's going through the roof. Okay. Then we have Medicaid. Medicaid is administered by the state, but is a joint state and federal health plan for disabled people, unmarried pregnant women and children, and others that meet the certain poverty levels.
And what we've noticed, if you're poor and you got a kid, the kid will get on Medicaid pretty easily.
Pretty easily.
If you're a single man, middle-aged,
can't get it.
Forget it.
So
you're in trouble.
So who's not covered? As Bill just said, and this is what's so wrong about the health care structure now, is yes, indeed, we're taking care of the elderly, say elderly, people our age and older, okay? We're taking care of them on Medicare. Medicaid addresses the most needy and the most poverty-stricken of our population, women, children, and the disabled. But we have a huge population that's not covered that are working people. That's the problem. Hard-working people. Some have 2 jobs, okay? Like Bill just said, you be a 40, 50-year-old man and you get a bad injury, you're out of work, you lose money, you can't pay your medical bills, you go to bank, you go bankrupt.
And some of these people, they could perhaps get back on their feet if they could have this surgery, but it's not life-threatening. The trouble is they could earn money if they could work, but they can't work till they have the surgery. Well, and they can't have the surgery till they have money, and they're just stuck. I probably have 3 or 4 clients right now that are in that situation.
But Bill, now that we sort of have this discussion, and I know the outrage of the conservatives, they'll make you buy broccoli one day, and broccoli will kill you if you get too much broccoli, okay? that absurd argument about broccoli, which is an absurd argument, that the government will make you buy broccoli or you'll pay a tax or a penalty. That's just
You might have to eat those words.
Oh, I want to eat those words.
Higher premiums for fat people.
Oh, that's probably appropriate. But anyway, so what's the solution, though? I mean, it's like, what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to do nothing, and we just hate Obama.
I agree with you. The Republicans' plan is, well, allow it across state lines and have tort reform. They really don't have a plan to address the fundamental problems. If their plan may get a few more people insured, but it's not a good plan.
It's not a good plan.
But the patient care, what is it? The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
It's just terrible. It doesn't bend the cost curve. It guarantees spending an enormous amount of money. And then, of course, they throw the politics in it. You know.
There are some politics.
Where the Catholic Church has to buy Sandra Fluke birth control. That's part of Obamacare. They're proud of that.
You know what's amusing about that? You are trained by the Catholics, and so you know the level of integrity there. So the question that I have is, since 95% of Catholic young women use birth control, what is it they don't want the government to pay for? I mean, I think if you
they
voted,
don't want to pay for it.
I'm saying the Catholic young women are the first ones that take birth control. So who is it that's outraged about it? It's the priests. Okay, they're the ones that don't want to do it.
I'm outraged about it. What came to everybody's attention was, and they backpedaled and they messed around with this, and it is that when you have a health plan now, the health plan has to include contraceptives. And unlike cancer drugs or prosthetic legs, you don't pay any copay at all for those. I mean, if you really need to have your head sewed up, you got to pay a little.
Yeah,
but birth control, that's free.
But contraceptives are pretty inexpensive, isn't it? I mean, they say
why are they
compared to brain surgery and stuff.
It's not something that you really ought to insure against. Why should you have insurance for toothbrushes?
It's a good argument that it shouldn't be within the confines of a health care plan. I think it's a good argument. I think the fact that the Catholics don't like it is ridiculous. Who cares, okay? But the fact is that the government is paying for that. I think there's a good argument it shouldn't happen.
The government isn't paying for it. They're forcing people who provide insurance now to pay for it. I don't like the politicians telling us what we have to provide for our employees.
Yeah.
They do.
I agree.
And the Catholic Church has a stronger argument because their policy is against birth control. Maybe everybody ignores it. So what?
Well, I misspoke when I said the government paid for it. The government mandates it.
The government mandates
That's what I was saying.
Right.
But the fact that the government mandates this, and then it's being presented as an affront to the Catholic Church, what? I mean, the church itself is not going to have to do it.
It's an affront to everybody.
Employees of the Catholic Church are not going to be bound by this. What we're talking about are all the enterprises that the Catholic Church is involved in.
No, we're talking about Notre Dame and Georgetown.
Well, they're involved in enterprises, educational enterprises and health care and other enterprises. I'm just talking about the church itself is not going to be obligated to do that.
And you're perfectly okay with forcing them to
I just don't
provide.
think that. I know. I'm not for anybody having to provide it. I think you're right. I think your point about that's very well taken. I'm just not impressed with the argument that this is somehow an affront to the Catholic faith. I think that's kind of nonsense.
Well, that's the policy. That's been their policy for a long time. You can disagree with it. I think the genesis of it is, we just want people producing more Catholics. That's what it started out as.
Well, of course.
But that's their policy. And why should the government override that policy? People choose. Sandra Fluke chose to go to that school. She didn't have to.
You've treated her very shabbily. She's a fine young woman.
She's a joke.
She's a little promiscuous, but
outraged, absolutely outraged. She's unmarried. Well, who cares?
Yeah.
And apparently she's sexually active, and she just cannot stand the idea that she has to buy her own birth control. And it's a war against women. And this is such a strong position for the Democratic Party. They invited her to come to the convention and make a speech. It's outrageous.
I wasn't part of that. I didn't make that decision. I'm not proud of that decision.
Sandra Fluke.
I think that might have been
aptly named Sandra Fluke.
I think that was.
It's a war on women. And I heard this interview with one of the big movers and shakers. It wasn't Debbie Washerwoman, Wash Your Hair Schultz, whatever her name is. It was Barbara Mikulski, or one of those war horses of the liberal left. And they asked, Bill O'Reilly had one of these people on, and he said, "Wait a minute, this isn't just about this Sandra Fluke business. It's about nobody's saying she can't have birth control. It's about somebody else paying for it." And the answer was, if you just look at all the Republican policies, they're against women. Well, wait a minute. Let's just look at this policy. No, they didn't want to do this. They're just against having an abortion anytime you want, and it's just a big war against women.
Can I give you a general rule? Anybody that is stupid enough to go on Bill O'Reilly is not smart enough to speak for the Democratic Party, okay? Because he is a raging idiot, okay?
How much have you watched him? It's not that bad.
What do you mean he's not that bad?
He's not.
He's like drinking.
He lets some of these people have a say.
Well, that may be because they're toning them down a little bit. Because if you just let him go, he just rips and roars. I'm just saying, anybody that would go on the air with him and be subjected to it, it's just like Sean Hannity and all of these unilateral interview type formats where the people don't really get to express an opinion. I told you what Sean Hannity does. He loves to do this.
I love that. Are you proud of that?
This is a great line. He makes up the most outrageous kind of an insult he can about whoever he's talking about, usually poor Obama or somebody else. And then he asks the liberal guest, are you proud of that? Is that something you're really proud of? Just answer that question. Are you proud of that?
What a great technique.
He's a ding-dong. But the guy that's pretty smart, honestly, is Rush Limbaugh. He's pretty smart. He's
great
a
at packaging
showman.
ideas.
He's
an
showman.
entertainer. Yeah.
He is quick. He's got a great sense of humor. I listen to him and just bust up sometime with the way he characterizes everybody. And there's a kernel of truth to what he says a lot of times. It's like he usually gets it right
the
on the
environmental wackos and the feminazis.
And the way, all the names he makes of people. But the rest of them are all Rush Limbaugh wannabes. I mean, Sean Hannity. You know, it's just Laura Ingraham. This is a whole list of these people. And now they have them regionally, you know. Did you ever listen to that guy, Billy Cunningham, Sunday night?
No.
Oh, so you missed the best people.
Well,
Why aren't you?
You're kind of in the talk show world. Bob has his own talk show on radio where he deals with the most rabid right-wing people in existence out in Santa Rosa County.
There's some people on the edge, but I think when you listen to people like that, it helps you understand the world we live in. And just because they don't agree with me, sometimes I'll call and think, that's a pretty good point. And actually, they'll correct me.
I was a little impressed the one time I listened to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm busy. They were hard right wing, but they did kind of made sense.
Had some good points.
To it. Yeah.
Sometimes they have some good points. We had a guy call the other day. They were talking about. We were talking. I got a marginal type person was. I shouldn't say it, but somebody was trying to argue about creationism, which is just it's hardly even something you can debate because it's so nutty, and that the world's 6,000 years old and we live with the dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. And so as this thing developed, another guy called in. And he said because he was bashing the whole dating system. Yeah. So I was talking about carbon dating like I knew what I was talking about. He said, well, Mr. Kerrigan, actually, he said it's isotope dating, and he said there are sophisticated isotope dating techniques that are far superior to carbon dating, and I didn't realize that. And so he said
does that prove creationism?
No, he was saying counter to the creationism argument that's how you establish these time periods. He said, now when you go back, hundreds of millions of years, he said you're going to be off some in that, but the fact that this isotope dating. So I mean, people like that listen. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting, You can. I mean,
people say evolution is just a theory. Indeed it is. Gravity is just a theory.
That's right.
But you can actually demonstrate
exactly
evolution. You can demonstrate it.
Why do you think? Why do you think? Well, they're trying. I was at the board of zoning board today. By the way, I was very impressed with the people, with their intelligence. They're down there working for hours, going through the most nuanced little zoning problems, and it was impressive just watching these people. But one of the things they had was a young man that came up and talked about the turtles nesting. Okay. Well, one of the theories of evolution, as you know, is that the reason nature provides thousands of eggs and thousands of little babies and things is that the one that makes has got to be a pretty tough customer. And they're talking about the turtles, where you have 150 turtles, and many of them don't make it to the water even. So nature's way of picking the one to make it.
Right.
The one to make it. And then they produce, and they have 100 babies, and the one to make it. And so as you see that develop over time, it's just fascinating.
Oh, it's the theory of evolution, and Darwin didn't even know about genetics, which reinforces it.
All right.
There is a beauty to it. rather than just saying, well, God just made all these decisions and we can't discuss it anymore. There's a majesty to how this turns out that is just
the creative
wonderful.
force.
And that explains mistakes.
Sure.
You know, I mean, if God's in charge of it all, you have people, babies born with horrible deformities and, what is it, anencephalic, born without any brains.
Yeah.
You know, what is God? Is this a little joke God's pulling?
Yeah.
No, it's just there are mutations, and that's why there are mistakes, and that's just what goes on. It's these theories are beautiful.
Well, from the creative force, probably off the subject here because I was going to talk a little bit about astronomy, but the creative force, God that creates, okay, whatever that is, it's pretty masterful.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, whatever.
However this got here.
You know, I wouldn't mind, wouldn't honor or pray to this, but there's an organizing force in the universe. It all responds to these mathematical laws, and it's just majestic.
Morris Marks told me one time when I was talking to him about space and concepts of space and astronomy. He said, if you really know the mathematics, it is spectacularly beautiful. And I always remember what Morris said about that because he's a mathematician, you know. And that just had such an impression on me that I wish I did understand the math better.
Which leads to this, and while we're talking about good and positive things, Spinoza said, or no, Einstein was kind of a fan of Spinoza. Einstein got me into Spinoza, and Einstein said, I believe in a God whose laws can't be violated. I love that. You can't violate the law of gravity.
No.
You know?
No.
Now, you can eat fish on
speed
Friday
of light, or the speed of light.
Use taboo words or whatever, you know, and then, so it's easy to believe in a God like that. But if you believe in a God like that, it's very hard to believe that if you beg him hard enough, he'll kill your hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
And that's what I have a bit of a problem with.
Well, I think some of your illustrations of your opinions, not illustration. What is it? What is it? Was it some of the analogies maybe, that you use?
A little crude.
Or examples. Yeah, they're a little crude. I think the hemorrhoids is a little crude. Tell them about the story to Oral Roberts, the letter to Oral Roberts.
Oh, I wrote a couple.
Yeah.
I was laid up in the hospital, and I heard, was watching television, and an enormous Jesus appeared to Oral Roberts in the desert and told him to get money from people and establish, you know, a medical school or something. And I wrote and I said, Oral, I really had a hard time with Jesus appearing to you and telling you that you should get my money to do whatever until, of course, I'm not the kind of guy you are. Little baby Jesus appeared to me and told me that I ought to have a hot tub and you ought to pay for it. And I'll tell you where to send the check. And then I sent another letter that said, would you just mind with all this miracle stuff, you know, before I send any cash, could I have a little demonstration? And I don't want, you know, any enormous distortion of God's laws or anything. How about a haircut? I mean, even my wife can do that. Just leave it a little long in the back. And that didn't happen. It never happened. No.
Well, you tried. You tried to reach
I gave him a chance.
You gave him a chance.
You know?
You tried to
and he never sent me money for the hot tub. I was disappointed about that.
Did you ever send him? Did you send him any?
I sent letters. I don't think I ever sent any money.
No, I wouldn't think you would. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back, and we're going to talk about, I don't know what we got.
We got a lot of stuff. Well, let's talk about local stuff.
And the gas heist. We'll talk about that. We'll be back in a minute. You stay with us.